Imagine walking into a room, saying nothing, and still watching the atmosphere shift around you, like the air itself is adjusting to make space for something heavier, more certain, more undeniable. People straighten their posture, second-guess their tone, hesitate before speaking, not because you've said a single word, but because your presence speaks a language they've learned to obey, the language of assumed dominance. You didn't ask for respect, you didn't plead for attention, but something in the way you carry yourself makes others believe you already own what they're still hoping to earn. And here's the uncomfortable truth. This power has little to do with talent, or skill, or moral worth. It has everything to do with signal. Niccolo Machiavelli understood what most people still can't accept, that the world does not reward invisible virtue, it rewards visible authority. The person who walks like they belong will be treated as if they do. The one who hesitates, even when right, will be ignored. In a world ruled by perception, to act like you are the best is not arrogance. It is strategy. It is survival. It is the first move in a game where hesitation is interpreted as weakness, and humility is often mistaken for irrelevance. You were trained to wait your turn, to let your work speak, to be agreeable, modest, diplomatic. But Machiavelli would laugh at this. He'd remind you that while you're waiting to be recognized, someone else is already shaping the narrative, already commanding the room, already assuming the crown, before anyone offered it to them. And that's the paradox. You don't rise first and then project power. You project power, and that's what makes people believe you should rise. This is not about pretending, it's about understanding the game. And the game responds not to your potential, but to the persona you dare to project. So let me ask you directly, what would happen if you stopped asking for permission and started walking like the ground owed you something? Not because you're better, but because the world only notices those who act as if no one is better than them. You grew up hearing that if you were good enough, people would notice. That if you worked hard, if you were competent, upright and dedicated, recognition would come naturally, like fruit falling from the tree of justice. They said the world rewards the just, that those who are truthful don't need to show off, that it's enough to let their results speak for themselves. But there's something deeply wrong with this logic, and Machiavelli was one of the first to expose this illusion. The world is not guided by hidden merit, but by the visible perception of power. In practice, what we see is a different reality. Mediocre leaders being followed, shallow voices being obeyed, foolish decisions being accepted, not because they are the best, but because they were spoken with the confidence of someone who never asked permission to be heard. Meanwhile, brilliant minds are silenced, loyal hearts wait their turn, and genuine talents sink into the invisibility of those who believe that being enough is enough. Machiavelli understood that society is not a stage for impartial justice, but a silent game of influence where those who command are not the most capable, but the most daring, in appearing inevitable. The fatal error of the well-intentioned is to confuse justice with recognition and character with visibility. The problem was never a lack of courage, it was a lack of theatre. And in this theatre, those who refuse to act do not become spectators, they become extras. Because the truth is raw. People don't see your essence. They interpret your signals. They respond to your tone of voice, your gaze, your lack of hesitation. They follow those who act as leaders, not those who wait to be appointed. And more than that, the human brain is programmed to identify dominance before it identifies depth. In times of uncertainty, we follow those who convey certainty, even if it's empty, and we ignore those who hesitate, even if they're right. This is the minefield we walk through. And the most tragic thing, many of the defeated were never weak, just too educated to play the game as it really is. Machiavelli saw this clearly. For him, the belief that merit alone was enough was more than naive. It was a trap set by those already in control. While you strive to deserve it, they position themselves to win. While you wait for recognition, they occupy space. And while you wonder if you're ready, they already act as if they were born to lead, even without proof. Even without substance. It's hard to accept, but it's liberating. The game of power does not reward the most virtuous. It rewards those who understand that appearance is authority. You can be right and be ignored. It can be shiny and be discarded. It may be fair and yet be defeated by those who only know it seems inevitable. And this is the silent tragedy of invisible merit. It is real, but unrecognizable. This is where many get stuck, faced with the realization that the world doesn't reward justice, but presence, that it doesn't respond to inner truth, but to outer narrative. Most refuse to continue. It's more comfortable to remain faithful to an ethical ideal that keeps you small than to accept the brutal responsibility of becoming a strategist of your own image. But Machiavelli never wrote for the comfortable. He wrote for those willing to see the world as it is and act from that, not in spite of it. Taking the stage of your own authority isn't betraying who you are, it's protecting who you can become. It's not about falsehood or pretense, but about a refined awareness that everything about you communicates. And if you're not in control of that communication, someone will position you as an extra in their own story. Machiavelli knew that influence is not gained by being genuine in silence, but by being intentional in appearance. He doesn't ask you to be dishonest, but to understand that in a world where most judge by surface, refusing to shape the surface is choosing irrelevance. In other words, whoever refuses to act is choosing to be forgotten, not for lack of value, but for refusal to project it. That's why acting as if you're the best, even before any external validation, isn't vanity, it's survival. It's the foundation of all leadership, because, as he said, people see what you appear to be, but they rarely see what you really are. And if the world won't dig to your core to find your greatness, then it's your duty, bring it to the surface with intention, form, presence, and rhythm. Performance in this context is not a lie. It's a shield, it's a sword. It's the way the wolf walks among the sheep without apologizing for his teeth and without ever needing to show them until absolutely necessary. Machiavelli never believed that truth was enough. He knew, with surgical coldness, that the world does not belong to the most virtuous, but to those who know how to appear inevitable. And this means that, in the silent war of prestige, those who wait for validation are, in practice, relinquishing power. The world responds to those who present themselves with the authority of those who are not seeking approval, but rather delivering destiny. That's why the real game begins when you act as if he were already the best, not out of arrogance, but out of existential strategy. Because when you walk like you're the leader, speak like you're unquestionable, and remain silent like you don't need to explain yourself, you're not lying about who you are. You're accelerating the manifestation of who you can become. Power, after all, is often granted to those who seem to already have it. And the more you hesitate, the more you teach the world to doubt you. Machiavelli saw the world as a stage where every gesture communicates status, dominance, or submission. And on this stage, the secret is not to have power to then appear powerful, is appear powerful in order to then conquer the space where power exists. This is not illusion. This is perception engineering. The art of acting as if you're already the best requires a rare fusion of courage and calculation. The courage to be unapologetic about existing loudly, and the calculation to understand that people don't follow truth. They follow conviction. And when this conviction is performed consistently, the human brain interprets it as leadership, even when the substance is still under construction. That's what makes this art so dangerous and so effective. Because once you embrace this role with intention, you change the social dance around you. People who previously ignored you start to consider you. Spaces that once closed doors to you now open doors. Not because you've changed internally, but because you have outwardly assumed the form that the world respects. And most importantly, by acting as if you're already the best, you reprogram not only the perception of others, but also your own psyche. You stop being a passive spectator of your evolution and become the active architect of your ascension. Because behavior shapes identity, and identity shapes destiny. Machiavelli would have no mercy on your hesitation. He would tell you, the lion may have strength, but without the cunning of the fox, he will be deceived. And the trick here is knowing that appearing ready is the first step to being respected. Those who act like leaders create the expectation of leadership. Those who act like great people begin to act like one, and the world slowly adapts its narrative to align with this new script. Acting as if you are already the best is therefore a silent pact with the future. It is the decision not to wait for recognition to become visible. It's the ability to forge presence, even before you have a throne. Machiavellian posture isn't born of brute force or overt aggression. It's built with subtle mastery of perception. The method is simple to enunciate, but profound to apply. You must embody the image of someone the world already assumes is superior, even before any trial. And this requires three precisely choreographed elements: silent presence, non-negotiable conviction, and absolute emotional control. First, you need to cultivate what Machiavelli considered essential in any prince: the ability to manipulate the impression you make, not to deceive, but to conquer symbolic space. This starts with your presence. When you enter a room, your body language should be marked by economy of movement and an absence of anxiety. The body communicates dominance long before words. An erect posture, slow movements, and a steady gaze, not defiant but unwavering, transmit, without a sound, that you are not there to be accepted, but to be recognized. Second, you must speak less than you think. And when you do speak, do so with the clarity of someone who has already decided what they deserve. The world does not respect open doubt. It bows to calmly performed certainty. Machiavelli said that men must either be conquered or destroyed. And that metaphor applies here. Either your presence immediately commands respect, or it will be ignored as noise. Conviction doesn't need to be loud, but it does need to be unbreakable. A steady tone of voice, measured words, and a complete lack of justification are signs of a spirit that has already decided its own worth and is not for sale. Third, and perhaps most difficult, is emotional control. In a world that reacts impulsively, true power lies in those who can remain unfazed. This isn't repression, it's strategy. Whoever controls their own countenance controls the narrative. And as Machiavelli warned, men judge more by their eyes than by their ears. That is, your visible reactions shape how you will be remembered. The Machiavellian knows that showing anger, frustration, or insecurity is a luxury only the weak can afford. He trains self-control not out of moralism, but out of symbolic advantage. If all others are unstable, what is stable automatically becomes authority. The method works because it activates the archetype of the inevitable leader in the collective unconscious. That figure who doesn't need to prove their worth, because they project it with every gesture, pause, and decision. And in this game, the codes are subtle but powerful. Those who move slowly convey mastery of time. Those who remain silent after a provocation demonstrate that they don't need to win small battles. Those who look people in the eye without rushing are accustomed to command. The conscious repetition of these micro-behaviors creates, over time, a field of silent and absolutely indisputable influence. Act like you're already the best then. It's not pretending to be something you're not. It's rehearsing what you haven't yet had the courage to admit. It's transforming performance into reality. Because in the theatre of power, those who perform with excellence aren't lying, they're conquering. The true power, according to Machiavelli, is not necessarily what you possess. It's what others believe you possess. It's an art of invisible sculpting in which you shape perception before shaping facts. And if the masses react to image, not essence, then mastering that perception is more vital than any internal competence. Therefore, all visible power begins with the construction of three silent but non-negotiable pillars: posture, mystery, and control of social codes. 1. Posture, the body that already commands. Before you even say a word, the world has already decided whether to pay attention or not. Your body reveals more than your arguments, and those who lack control over their bodies are always at a disadvantage, even if they are right. The posture of power is not rigid or theatrical. It is economical, deliberate, serene. Machiavelli knew that the prince who needs to shout to be heard has already lost his authority. In other words, the body of a true leader carries a firmness that says, "I am in control, not because you gave me permission, but because I exist as if it were natural." And in this world of noise, those who seem naturally in command have already won half the battle. 2. Mystery. The art of never giving yourself up. The second principle is mystery, and here we are not talking about empty enigmas, but about strategic retention of information, emotion, and intention. The Machiavellian understands that revealing everything, even in the name of authenticity, is to become predictable, and the predictable never commands respect, only familiarity. Never make yourself hated, but never make yourself banal, Machiavelli would say. Maintaining a calculated silence, responding less than expected, and asking questions instead of justifying yourself are ways of cultivating an aura that keeps people one step back, trying to decipher you, and those who try to decipher you don't challenge you. 3. Social code control. Master the game without showing you're playing. The third principle is mastery of the invisible codes of the environment, those microdynamics of power, hierarchy, and expectation that most people don't even consciously perceive, but which shape every interaction. The Machiavellian doesn't just read these codes, he influences them subtly without ever appearing artificial. He understands that tone of voice, response time, the right moment to interrupt or back down, where he sits, how he dresses, when he smiles. Everything communicates position, and those who master these minimal gestures become, in the eyes of others, someone born to be above, even if they started at the bottom. These three principles, when applied consciously, not only generate respect, they generate silence. People speak less around those who dominate their own image. They police themselves, adjust, bend a little without realizing it, and that's where power begins, not with force, but with presence. And the secret is that this presence doesn't have to be real at first, it just has to be staged with precision until it becomes inevitable. Something profound happens when you finally stop asking permission to be seen as great. When instead of waiting for validation, you decide to embody the role with a firmness that no longer depends on the opinion of others, but on a silent pact you make with yourself. At that very point, something reorganizes within you. Your voice changes, your gaze becomes fixed, your decisions gain a clarity that was previously stifled by the fear of appearing arrogant or being rejected. You stop trying to prove and start simply projecting. The space once occupied by insecurity is now filled with a presence that doesn't need to be explained, just felt. And the most intriguing, and at the same time most powerful thing, is that the world around you responds almost immediately, as if it's been waiting all along for you to finally believe in the role you were born to play. Interruptions decrease. People look before speaking. Decisions are less questioned, and not because you became smarter or more experienced overnight, but because your image now communicates what your essence has always silently shouted. I am the one who sets the tone. Machiavelli knew that the world is governed not by hidden merit, but by the theatre of presence. And when you take the stage without hesitation, even if internally you're still adjusting to your new armor, the audience begins to applaud. Because in the game of power, internal doubt doesn't need to be eliminated. It just needs to be contained until the performance overcomes it. This is how you transform yourself, not by changing the world first, but by changing the way the world reads you. And that's only possible when you finally decide you're ready to act as if it were the best, until it becomes impossible to deny. Assuming the role of someone who commands even before being recognized requires more than enthusiasm. It requires method. Machiavelli didn't believe in naive spontaneity, but in strategic repetition, in deliberate image building, in subtle gestures that train the world to see you the way you want to be perceived. Power doesn't flourish in emotional improvisation. It's cultivated in the nearly invisible discipline of detail. And so, here are 4 practices, not empty advice, but concrete rituals that will help you embody this role with brutal, silent authority. 1. Train the eye that does not waver. Before any word is spoken, your eyes have already pronounced a sentence. The way you look at someone, steady, calm, unhurried to look away, conveys a confidence that verbal language can never achieve. Practice this. Look into their eyes without aggression, but with calm intensity. Maintain visual silence. Don't shy away, because whoever holds the gaze holds the power. 2. Move with economy and conviction. The body communicates status before the resume. Therefore, eliminate excessive gestures, nervous touches, and hurried movements that betray anxiety. Replace them with restrained gestures, calculated pauses, and firm strides. Those who move as if the world is waiting for their next decision begin to be treated as leaders, even if they are still behind the scenes. Machiavelli would call this mastery over the theatre of impression. 3. Talk less, but with surgical direction. It's not about keeping quiet, but about choosing each word like someone choosing the right blade before an operation. Speak slowly, without rushing to fill the silence. And when you speak, do so with the conviction of someone not trying to convince, but simply describing an inevitable reality. The Machiavellian understands that the strength of a speech lies not in the quantity of arguments, but in the quality of the presence that sustains it. 4. Visualize the role until it becomes natural. Every day, for a few minutes, stop, close your eyes, and see yourself as the person who masters their own narrative. Imagine difficult situations being resolved coolly, challenging people retreating before your composure, entire environments rearranging themselves around you without you saying a word. This isn't self-help, it's conditioning. The brain needs repetition to naturalize what once seemed distant. And when this visualization becomes a habit, the role ceases to be acting and begins to be identity. These practices, if performed rigorously, don't just create a powerful image. They create a new internal center of gravity from which the world begins to orbit differently around you. And the curious thing is that, as Machiavelli would say, the more natural your performance seems, the harder it will be for others to perceive that they are being guided, not by imposition, but by the silent authority of the one who decided to act as if he were already the best. There's something profoundly transformative and dangerously effective in understanding that the world doesn't react to your essence, but to what you can accurately project. And that's precisely where Machiavellian psychology's most underrated power lies, the art of inducing the world to treat you as what you are still becoming. Not because it is a lie, but because, as Machiavelli taught, truth is not what it is what it appears to be, and perception always comes before proof. The self-induced image is not pretense, it is deliberate creation. It is an act of symbolic engineering where you decide what energy precedes your presence, what narrative precedes your words, what impression settles in the air before you are even understood. The most fascinating and brutal thing is that when this image is consistently sustained, the world begins to accept it as fact, and those who doubted it before now hesitate to confront it. This is the difference between the naive and the strategist. The naive expect to be recognized for who they are. The strategist shapes the way others see them. And the more they act as if they're the best, with quiet dignity, emotional mastery, and unwavering poise, the harder it becomes for the world to deny their worth, even if they can't quite put it into words. You don't need to be infallible. You need to be unforgettable. And that starts when you understand that respect comes from form, not just content. From posture, not just argument. From presence, not just intention. Machiavelli never demanded perfection. He demanded awareness of self, of the game, of others. And those who act as if they're already at the top, with firmness, strategy, and coolness, often get there before they even realize it. So the ultimate question isn't whether you're the best. The question is, are you willing to act as if you are, until it becomes impossible for the world to pretend you aren't?